Bienvenidos a La Oveja Eléctrica, un espacio donde exploramos las hipótesis más interesantes que hace la ciencia para explicar los misterios de la naturaleza.
¿Qué tal, Pepe?
¿Qué tal, Silvina?
Así es. Por ejemplo, uno de los grandes misterios en la biología es cómo le hacen las palomas o las mariposas monarca para encontrar su camino de regreso a casa.
Tal vez implica una comunicación que se mueve en campos que van más allá de las distancias que percibimos.
Pepe Gordon estuvo en Londres, donde entrevistó a Rupert Sheldrake, un biólogo de la Universidad de Cambridge, sobre su polémica hipótesis en torno a estos campos que podrían afectarnos profundamente mediante el poder de la resonancia.
Rupert Sheldrake, thank you very much for this interview for Channel 22 in Mexico. You know, the French writer André Malraux once said that just by creating a work of art, its beauty transforms the world. So how can we explain that in the light of your hypothesis on morphic resonance? And what is morphic resonance?
A work of art creates, if it's an original work of art, creates a new field, a new set of relationships, which transforms the way we see or understand, and this can affect the way we experience the world. I mean, I think the work of art is not just something about beauty, but about a new way of seeing the world. And my idea of morphic resonance is really to do with the memory of patterns or forms. All through nature we find patterns and forms. Molecules are forms. Plants are obviously forms. Each species has a different form. And the different parts of the plant have different forms. The petals, the flowers, the seeds, the fruits, the leaves, the roots, the stems. And of course animal embryos, as they grow, develop the characteristic form of their species. And our thoughts are also forms. And works of art are also forms. So really my hypothesis is called the hypothesis of formative causation. It's about the causes of forms. And I think that forms in nature, self-organizing systems, not the forms of machines, but the forms of plants, animals, molecules, crystals, these depend on organizing fields, which I call morphic fields. The word morphic comes from the Greek word for form, morphe. And these organizing fields are invisible structures like plans which shape the systems they're organizing, a bit like an architect's plan shapes a building in a way that's over and above the building materials. The building materials alone are not enough to make a building. You have to have a plan. The cells are not enough to make an arm or a leg or a plant. There has to be a kind of plan, and that's what morphic fields do. And the most controversial part of this hypothesis is the idea that these fields have a kind of memory, that each species has a kind of collective memory, that plants of a given species, for example a coconut palm, tune in by morphic resonance to the forms of previous plants of that kind. That a giraffe embryo, as it develops, tunes into a collective memory of previous giraffes.
I would like to read you something that Borges, the writer Borges, wrote in the History of Eternity, in a book called History of Eternity, quoting Schopenhauer, that has to do with these forms in nature, and that is connected in some way to Plato. So he says this: "It is the life and fate of lions to seek lionness, which considered in time is an immortal lion that maintains itself by the infinite replacement of individuals," you could say by memories, "whose engendering and death form the pulse of this undying figure." So you are talking about this evolving pulse, because it's a pulse that has memory and it's evolving. It's an habit of nature.
Well, that's a fascinating quote. That's from Schopenhauer?
Yes, that's from Schopenhauer. Borges just retakes it.
Oh, I see. I don't remember seeing that. That's fascinating. Well, you see, I think that the relationship of what I'm saying to Platonic forms is interesting. It's interesting he mentions that, because in the ancient world, Plato said that every lion participates in the eternal lion form, which is in the realm of ideas. Aristotle, who was Plato's student, said that every lion is shaped by the lion's soul, which is immanent in nature, not beyond space and time, but part of space and time.
Intellectual.
Yes, the entelechy of the lion would shape the lion. But for both Plato and Aristotle, this was not an evolution, because they didn't have the concept of evolution. These forms were more or less eternal. What I'm saying is that they are not eternal, they evolve. So what I'm saying is more like Aristotle than Plato, because Plato's ideas are completely transcendent beyond space and time. What I'm putting forward is basically a kind of evolutionary Aristotelianism, where you have an evolving form based on a memory through countless lions in the past, but without a Platonic form at the beginning. I leave open the question of creativity. How did the first lion become a lion? And it's one theory of creativity is Platonic, that beyond space and time there are the potentials for all forms of life that have ever been or will ever be. That's a Platonic theory. You can't test it scientifically, so it's a metaphysical theory. I prefer, like Bergson, the idea that evolution is creative. Bergson's other great book is called L'évolution créatrice, creative evolution. And he argues against Platonism, that Platonism is non-evolutionary, but the wonder of evolution is that evolution is creative. And humans don't like the idea of creativity because we want to explain everything in terms of what's gone before. And a Platonic form is eternal, so in a sense that's a precedent. But what's exciting about evolution is the fact that new things really happen, that there's a creative spirit working through the whole evolutionary process. The world is being made up as it goes along. It's not all pre-planned, it's not all predestined, but that evolution involves creativity as well as habit. I like that idea.
El león individual resuena con el arquetipo de león, pero se trata de un arquetipo en movimiento. Es una idea paradójica, un arquetipo creativo, una especie de molde o plano, pero en evolución, que permitiría que 1 milímetro de conocimiento o de belleza que un ser humano ha ganado se incorpore a nuestra especie, resuene en nuestro cuerpo y en nuestra mente. Después de un corte, seguiremos hablando de esta atrevida y polémica idea que Sheldrake empezó a explorar al estudiar cómo es que las palomas saben regresar a casa. Como de rayo, estamos de regreso en La Oveja Eléctrica con un gran misterio de la biología que nos adentra, por decirlo así, en una especie de novela de palomas.
En la novela Véase Amor, David Grossman explora el extraño llamado biológico que tienen los salmones al regresar a casa.
Grossman dice que han viajado al exilio, a las aguas saladas del mar, y de pronto tienen una especie de impulso en el cerebro que los hace retornar, saltar contra las cascadas para volver al lugar de origen.
¿Cómo le hacen los salmones para reconocer el camino de regreso a casa? Desde Londres, Pepe Gordon conversa con el biólogo Rupert Sheldrake, quien se hizo esta pregunta no con salmones, sino con palomas. No se pierda esta interesante conversación.
You began this study or this thinking with the analysis of what pigeons do when they return home. How do they return home? This was a kind of seed of the idea you are talking about. Please tell us about this phenomena of pigeons.
Well, I've always been interested in pigeons. When I was a child, I kept pigeons at home and I tested their ability to find their way home. I took them away on my bicycle in a cardboard box and then released them. I cycled as far as I could, released them, and when I got home, the pigeons had got there first. They could fly faster than I could cycle. And I asked people, how do they do it? And nobody knew. And then when I was doing research at Cambridge, I asked my colleagues, how do they do it? Nobody knew, and still nobody knows. Most scientists will say, well, it must be by magnetism, because everything else has been tried and it's failed. it's not remembering the way out, because you can anesthetize the pigeons and take them out, rotating them while they're anesthetized in a wiggly route. And when they can't recover, they'll fly straight home. It's not eyesight, because if you put contact lenses, frosted glass lenses on their eyes, they can fly within half a kilometre of their home. They bump into trees and things, but they can go hundreds of kilometres without being able to see. It's not the sun's position, because they can do it on cloudy days and even at night. So all these standard ideas have been tested and they've failed. So that's why most scientists now say, well, it must be magnetism. And there's some evidence that pigeons have a compass sense. But that really won't explain it. I mean, if you think about it, if you were parachuted into an unknown place and given a compass, the compass would tell you where north is, but it wouldn't tell you where home is. So it's simply not explained, and the same problem applies to migratory animals, insects like monarch butterflies, birds that fly from South America to North America in the spring and back again in the North American winter or autumn. So there's a huge problem here. How do they find their way? And for me, the idea that seemed most likely to explain it is that there's an invisible connection between the pigeons and their home, like an invisible elastic band, a field that links them to their home. So when they're released, they fly around and they feel a pull towards their home, and they go that way because they feel this pull because of this field that connects them to the home. But none of the known fields of physics could do that. And I think this is an example of a morphic field, a kind of memory of being at the home. When they're taken away, this field that links them to their home, to which they're attached, not just to the home, but to the other pigeons within the home, when you take them away, the field is stretched, and when they're released, they feel this pull and go back home. So this has been something I've been interested in for a very long time, and the question is still undecided. I've done experiments on this. The standard experiments with homing pigeons is you take the pigeons from the home and then they go home. My experiment is the opposite. You take the home from the pigeons and you release them at the position that was home, but their loft and their families are not there anymore. Can they find them? Well, so far, the most impressive experiments were done at sea. I managed to persuade the Royal Dutch Navy to do this experiment on their main research ship. And we trained pigeons to live on board a ship. And this ship sailed from Holland to St. Martin in the Caribbean and back again, covering, what, 7,000 to 8,000 kilometers or something. And the pigeons could find the ship even when they were released many kilometers away. In one case, they found it from 300 kilometers away. Now, I think they couldn't have seen it from so far away. So I think this evidence points to there being a connection with the home. But of course, this research, it needs to be replicated, and it's very hard to persuade people to do these experiments on ships at sea. But this is one of the great unsolved problems of biology.
To see this kind of memory that is there in some field, that's the hypothesis.
Estamos hablando de la biología del regreso a casa, un tema mítico en la literatura. En el gran poema Muerte sin fin, José Gorostiza hablaba del Ulises Salmón de los regresos. Ahora, Ulises toma forma de paloma para regresar a casa mediante un mecanismo biológico que todavía no entendemos del todo. El problema para Sheldrake es cómo demostrar su hipótesis mediante la investigación científica. Más adelante seguiremos conversando de ello. Antes del corte, vamos con nuestra compañera Aura López a una sección que nos deja con el ojo cuadrado. Querida Aura, bienvenida como siempre aquí a La Oveja Eléctrica.
Muchas gracias, Pepe.
Oye, ¿qué tiene que ver la película Pacific Rim de Guillermo del Toro con lo que nos vas a hablar el día de hoy? Y también, ¿qué tiene que ver con las posibilidades de rehabilitación para problemas de parálisis?
Pues de entrada que usan una tecnología que sí nos dejan con el ojo cuadrado, porque vamos a hablar de los exoesqueletos o los trajes biónicos, que son similares a los que se usaron en la película de Pacific Rim, solo que Pacific Rim fue mucha ciencia ficción. Y en este caso es una realidad que vamos a ver en el video. Esta tecnología lo que sucede es que es un cuerpo o un traje biónico hecho de metal que te ayuda a movilizar el cuerpo. Y una vez que te lo pones, te ayuda a caminar paso a paso y recuperar un poco como las funciones motrices. Aquí podemos ver justo que lo probé. Aquí en México hay una clínica que tiene esta tecnología. Ellos tienen que usar un control remoto según la terapia que necesites. El aparato pesa 20 kilos y tienes que tener mucha coordinación para caminar.
Te lleva, ¿verdad? Esa tecnología hace que te muevas lo que no puedes mover.
Sí, tú estás sentado, te ponen unas tiras, te lo ajustan al cuerpo y de repente él lo activa e inmediatamente te levanta. O sea, tú no haces nada. De hecho, ahí lo complicado es que yo intentaba mover, yo intentaba caminar como lo hago siempre y me decían, no, tú no muevas, tú nada más pon el bastón y solito te va a mover. Entonces pones el bastón, te mueve una pierna, pones otro bastón, te mueve otra pierna y vas caminando poco a poco.
Y te vas acostumbrando a precisamente volver a entrenar a tu mente y a tu cuerpo a estar en esa integración.
A que justamente se dé la conexión entre tu cuerpo y tu cerebro.
Pues como siempre, interesantísimo y te agradecemos mucho tu presencia aquí.
Muchas gracias, Pepe.
En La Oveja Eléctrica. Volvemos enseguida con Rupert Sheldrake, biólogo de la Universidad de Cambridge, para hablar de una comunicación entre las especies que va más allá de lo que vemos. Sheldrake plantea la hipótesis de campos morfogenéticos en donde estamos vinculados mediante el poder de la resonancia. Como de rayo, estamos de regreso en La Oveja Eléctrica para hablar de una novela de palomas, una comunicación entrañable entre las diferentes especies a través de una resonancia de sus formas que permitiría imaginar cómo es que las palomas conocen el camino de regreso a su origen. Estamos hablando de la biología del regreso a casa.
Pepe Gordon conversa con el biólogo Rupert Sheldrake, destacado investigador de la Universidad de Cambridge, quien en 1974 publicó un importante trabajo en la revista Nature sobre el problema de la apoptosis, la programación de la muerte en las células. La curiosidad de Sheldrake lo llevó años más tarde a plantear una polémica hipótesis que permitiría entender cómo una obra de arte se incorpora a la memoria de la especie humana a través de la resonancia.
So there's a memory in nature.
And in that sense, even if you write a work of art or you do a work of art, even though it's not read or it's not seen, just by creating it, it should have an effect on collective consciousness.
Yes, but it'll have more effect if many people see it, because morphic resonance is a quantitative phenomenon. If one rat learns a new trick in London, then rats all over the world may learn it slightly quicker, but if thousands of rats learn it, it'll become much easier for rats elsewhere to learn. So if a new style in art becomes more widely known, and this happens in the history of art, at first, some of Beethoven's music, people couldn't understand it, and then after thousands of people have listened to it, it becomes a normal thing. Some modern art forms like Cubism, at first, very few people could understand. Then when millions of people have seen them, it becomes much easier to appreciate. So there is a quantitative aspect. There is a change if just one person does it, but it's not so big a change as if lots of people assimilate this form into their minds.
How do you test this hypothesis? Because this is the problem, to test it, because it's a very good idea, but how to test? I know that you've been doing some experiments, but sometimes it seems they work, sometimes it seems they don't work, or at least this is the controversy.
Yes, well, I mean, the hypothesis is, of course, very controversial. It can be tested in any area, chemistry, biology, psychology. There have been some specific tests say, in the realm of learning. There's already quite a lot of evidence from experiments with rats that when rats have learned a new trick in one place, it's easier for them to learn it somewhere else. So that evidence is already quite powerful. Of course, people who don't like this hypothesis will say, well, we must find another explanation for these facts. And with everything, you can find other explanations. No evidence in science or anything else is completely conclusive unless it's been replicated many, many times. Then it becomes a habit itself to believe that. In the realm of human psychology, there have been quite a few tests to find out if it's easier to learn something other people have already learned. And again, the most convincing evidence, I think, comes not from my own experiments, which have been on quite a small scale, but from the observation that in standardized tests, like intelligence tests, over the 20th century, from 1918 until the end of the 20th century, in fact, right up to the present, I predicted that the average score in intelligence tests would go up, not because people are getting more intelligent, but because millions of people have done these tests, and it should be easier to do the test when lots of other people have done them. And this is exactly what's found. It's called the Flynn Effect in psychology, after the person who discovered it, James Flynn. And there's been an increase of more than 30% in average IQ tests all over the world, with no evidence for increased intelligence, except on these tests. So I think this is the kind of evidence that supports the hypothesis.
This would be something like what is happening with the children that learn very easily to play Nintendo and to play video games. But that belongs to a generation also. They resonate with a generation.
Yes. Well, with any new skill, Morphic Resonance would make it easier to learn. But in real life, of course, other things change. There are training videos, there are better ways of teaching people, the designs of the equipment changes, like skateboarding. I mean, it's getting easier for people to learn skateboarding tricks, according to expert skateboarders. But it could partly be because they've seen more videos of skateboarding, the design of the equipment has improved. So this evidence doesn't conclusively prove morphic resonance. I don't claim this hypothesis is totally proved. I claim it's a hypothesis for which there's quite a lot of evidence, direct and circumstantial, and that it's an open question. It's also not proved that science, the universe is governed by fixed laws. That's just an assumption. So my point really is not I'm right and other people are wrong, but that this is an open question, and that it's the strength of science that through further research one can actually find out which is more likely to be true.
Se trata pues de una pregunta abierta. ¿Existe la resonancia mórfica? ¿Existe la resonancia entre las formas de una misma especie? ¿Existe la resonancia con una idea que se ha lanzado al aire? Bob Dylan diría que la respuesta está en el viento. Sheldrake dice que se encuentra en un campo morfogenético invisible. En futuros programas de La Oveja Eléctrica en la siguiente temporada, hablaremos con Sheldrake de fenómenos que podrían estar involucrados con su hipótesis. ¿Cómo saben los perros cuando sus amos vienen en camino? ¿Podemos sentir cuando alguien nos mira por detrás? ¿La telepatía es un fenómeno de resonancia entre pensamientos? La curiosidad tiene que pasar por la prueba del método científico para confirmar o rechazar hipótesis que parecen hablarnos de una especie de novela que se adentra en el interior de la vida de las palomas y de nuestras especies. Rupert Sheldrake en La Oveja Eléctrica. Pasamos ahora a la sección Aguas con la Morsa con el físico Manuel López Michelone. Oye, pues querido Morsa, estamos hablando el día de hoy de la resonancia. ¿Puede haber resonancia entre ideas?
Yo pienso que sí, Pepe, porque fíjate que, por ejemplo, pienso en un diapasón, ¿no? Tú le pegas al diapasón, suena, creo que es el la, creo que es la nota la que realmente suena, y entonces si no hay quien en donde resuene, se apaga. Y las ideas son iguales, o sea, yo leo una idea de alguien, y puede ser, no sé, muy complicado, muy difícil de entender, o quizás pues muy especulativa, lo que sea, y puede ser que yo la tome en cuenta o no. A lo mejor no la tomo en cuenta y digo, no, no sirve, eso que está diciendo es una tontería. O a lo mejor resuena en mí y entonces investigo más profundamente. Entonces yo sí creo que las ideas tienen resonancia. Sin duda el mecanismo es diferente, pero el efecto es el mismo. Resuena una idea en uno y entonces uno la hace propia y la ejecuta, ¿no? Y la hace ver en otros también.
¿Resonancia sin imitación?
Sí, pienso que sí, porque la resonancia es una especie de transmisión de información. No estoy copiando, estoy viendo la información de alguna manera de alguien y entonces tomo mis propios criterios para establecer si vale la pena o no vale la pena. Pero creo que no estoy copiando nada más, vaya, no es una copia, pues, ¿no? Sino que elaboro en esa misma copia, ¿no?
Las ideas están en el aire.
Pues deben estar. Sí, Pepe, yo pienso que sí. Sí, las ideas están en el aire.
Y como siempre, entonces diríamos con Bob Dylan, la respuesta entonces está en el viento.
Así es, Pepe, la respuesta está en el viento.
Y como siempre, es un gusto resonar contigo, querido amor.
Gracias.
Y bien, nosotros pasamos ahora a la sección Veo con nuestra querida compañera Miriam Moscona. Querida Miriam, como siempre, un gusto encontrarnos aquí en Oveja Eléctrica.
Para mí también, Pepe.
Oye, pues ya sé que tienes ojos de mosquita eléctrica, pero imagínate que tuvieras en esos ojos unos microscopios electrónicos. ¿Qué veríamos?
Hoy verías todo radicalmente distinto. Las imágenes que vamos a ver hoy son acercamientos inquietantes gracias a un microscopio electrónico y que produce eso, imágenes inquietantes.
Claro que sí, vamos a ver.
Decía el poeta portugués Fernando Pessoa, come chocolates, muchacha, mira que no hay metafísica en el mundo como los chocolates. Y en efecto, esto que ve usted en su pantalla no es más que un chocolate relleno de menta. Después del chocolate, tal vez resulte poco agradable saber qué es esto que vemos aquí. Todos nosotros lo producimos, pero no es exactamente grato verlo en el vecino. Se trata de la cerilla de la oreja que más nos vale limpiar para no despertar miradas extrañas de quienes tenemos cerca. Cordilleras no son aptas para alpinistas, pues si ponemos un zapato encima seguramente romperemos ese objeto de antaño, ese objeto de culto que ha vuelto a circular. Se trata de un disco de vinil agrandado 1000 veces gracias al ojo de un microscopio electrónico. ¿Cómo fue tomada esta imagen? Sin duda con un microscopio electrónico. Sin embargo, la pregunta aún nos intriga. Se trata de una ruptura capilar que le abre paso a la salida de la sangre. No cabe duda, más vale recordar a Ramón de Campoamor. En este mundo traidor, nada es verdad ni mentira. Todo es según el color del cristal con que se mira.
Con el color de la mirada de nuestra querida compañera Miriam Moscona, llegamos al final de esta emisión de La Oveja Eléctrica.
Los esperamos en este espacio donde encontramos el poder de la resonancia que fluye en las ideas creativas. Aquí, en Canal 22. Somos una opción.
Nos encontramos con el profesor Roger Penrose, físico y matemático de la Universidad de Oxford, para hablar de la curiosidad que sigue manteniendo en su mente para explorar los enigmas de la física, de las matemáticas y del cerebro.
Well, I'll be seeing you soon in Oveja Eléctrica.
En Canal 22.